Hey guys, Come4MC here. Today we're going to be talking about sequencers. Sequencers are pretty simple on the surface, but when you start to get into their complexities, they can become pretty daunting. So what we're going to do today is we're going to cover the basics, and then we're going to jump into some of the subtler things that you can do with sequencers. So let's get to it. So, the first thing that we're going to do is place down a microchip. I always use a microchip because it condenses everything within it. So we go to the sequencer here, it's the red icon in the advanced logic tools, and place it down. You'll notice that it automatically opens up, and we're going to go ahead and shrink it down. You can shrink using left and right, and you can scale it up and down, which allows you to fit more things on it. Okay, so we'll just place it here. Then we'll go into the sequencer tweak menu. Notice that it has a trigger radius, so normally you would wire the input to the left little node on the bottom there, or reset it on the bottom. But if there's not a wire there, then you can just set the radius on your own. Now notice that there's 3 stripes there. So the setting here is seconds per stripe. And we also have a loop option. I'm going to go ahead and make it loop and leave it at the default 1 second per stripe. Okay? And I dropped into the level there, my camera took over just so I could get the sequencer moving. Notice that it passes 1 stripe every second, so it goes the whole sequencer in 3 seconds. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you guys basics of how to use batteries on sequencers. Notice that I can scale the batteries, just like with the sequencer, using up and down. And notice that when that red stripe passes over the battery, that it'll light up, and it will output that 100% or whatever your battery is set to. Okay, now I'm going to need something for it to actually trigger, so I'm going to pull out a piece of hologram material and use that as a light, just because it's easy. Then I grab my wire for my battery, wire it to my light there, and now when the battery lights up, the light does the same. Simple, right? Okay. Now we can also do a few more complicated things, not that this is going to be too crazy. You can use a second battery and add a second light, and we'll start our basics of a sequence of lights. So notice it'll light up the first light and then the second light. So you can arrange your batteries however you would like, but batteries are not the only thing that we can use. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those because they bother me. Delete our lights. And we're going to see what happens when you put a tag on the sequencer. So just like you might expect, the tag will light up when that bar glides over top of it. So when it does that, it's going to generate a signal, and we're going to see if we can't pick up that signal. Ah, looks like it's not working. Notice that the tag sensor and the tags are technically on the same circuit board. So everything is within that bottom circuit board on the little square of dark matter right there. Okay, so we're going to have to move our sensor off of the circuit board in order for it to work. So see, now when it goes over that battery, it picks up that signal with our tag sensor here, because that circuit board is within the range of our tag sensor. Okay, so let's see what else we can't do with this. Let's pull out another piece of hologram material, place that down, and then run a wire to it. And I'm going to move that back a layer because keep it nice and tidy. So there, you'll see when that vertical line goes over our tags, it triggers the light. And we have done that with no wires running between the two. And I can extend my tags there to achieve the same effect that I could by extending my batteries. So this is all pretty simple so far. And we can also do some more complicated things where you add different colored tags to the same sequencer. And if I do that, I'll have to make my pairing with my tag sensor the different color to match up. So you'll notice that now we have green and blue tag sensors lighting up at the bottom. Okay, so So that's tags, basics of tags. It has some nice applications when you're looking out for it. So what we're going to do now is show what you can do with circuit boards on sequencers. And in fact, they do work. So notice, whatever I have on my circuit board, it will work for as long as that red stripe is over top of the sequencer, or the red stripe is over top of the circuit board. So if I set up a really simple circuit board here, just run a NOT gate to itself and to the tag there, it will turn on and start flickering for as long as that stripe is over my circuit board. Now the one caveat here is that if you pick up your circuit board and you try to scale it, you can't. It's locked into that size, which is a bummer, but we work with what we've got. Okay, so we've learned that you can put sequencers, or put circuit boards on sequencers. You can put tags and batteries. You can also use world tweakers. I'll go ahead and put a score giver on there, set to 10. So now every time that stripe passes over it, it'll give 10 points. So notice it's sourcing from this the circuit board down there. And probably the most interesting of the things that we can use is sequencers on sequencers. It may seem silly now to think about that. And let's go ahead and turn this one to start playing forward and turn off the loop. So it will only start playing forward when it gets turned on by the other stripe. So notice that they're moving together, but they're out of phase with one another because that second sequencer doesn't start until the first sequencer gets 2/3 of the way down. But we don't have to have them set to the same time. So let's say I set this to 0.3. Let's go 0.2. So now, when I get my sequencer going, notice that it will trigger that top sequencer, the inner sequencer, to go faster. Now you may be asking yourself, why is this useful? Well, notice that when we put tags on here, and you make a pattern, you can't make your tags any smaller than half of a bar. Okay? Well, putting a sequencer inside of a sequencer allows for a workaround for that. So now there are 3 short bursts within that one stripe. Fancy, and we can speed that up to make our short bursts even faster. So it allows you to have a little more control on your sequencers without having to change the time of the whole thing if you wanted something faster to happen. Okay, so that's sequencers within sequencers, which has nice uses. I just went over a simple one there. We're going to show another setting though. You'll notice that it's set to start playing forward by default, but we can do some other interesting things if we change that input type. So I'm going to wire up a timer here, set to reset itself just so it plays over and over again, and I'm going to set my sequencer to positional. Notice that we have start playing backwards, speed scale, and if you look at that one, you'll notice that it goes faster depending on where the timer is, and here's positional. Positional is probably the most useful setting of your sequencer that you can get. Notice that that red bar that we've set up, or that horizontal moving vertical line, it will move at the same rate as our timer. So it will match the positional setting of our timer. What's really going on here is that timer is giving a signal as a percentage of 100, and the sequencer is matching that signal as its position out of 100. So I could set up a similar thing to what I had before, but now I can have control over how fast the sequencer is going to move by changing what the input signal is to it. So we'll just set it to that, and we'll show what else we can do. So, oops, that's the timer. Let's use a counter. So counters do the same thing. They have a percentage out of 100. So if we have a target count of 5, each time it goes up, it'll go up 20%. So to make it easier, I'm going to match my sequencer to have 5 stripes because I have 5 settings for my counter. So notice what happens when I take my, set that back to 5, my current count up to 1, it'll hit that first one. 2, second one, and 3 third stripe. 4 it'll go to that one, which doesn't have a key, and 5th it will go all the way to the end. Now, how is this useful? Well, let's set up a timer here to make my counter go up automatically. So notice that if I set this to 1, every 1 second that sequencer will step up a stripe, or 20% of the way across. It's pretty handy. And notice we get the same effect there, but since we have the first, second, and third are all turning on that key, it just looks like it stays on for a while. Okay, we can do some other interesting things here. So here, let's expand this key all the way to the end, which means that key will turn on, and that key tag, stuck in Little Big Planet 1 mode, that tag will turn on after it's been turned on for 1, and then it'll stay on for 2 and 3 and 4. And I'm just stepping these, so we have 5 tags that'll turn on, and it'll add a tag each time it counts up 1. But notice what's happening. It's resetting before that last tag can hit. So I'm going to expand this to 6, and I'll do the same for my counter, so the stripes match up. So now it'll add 1, and then reset. And then add 1, add 1, add 1, add 1, and reset after the last one. Okay. So right now I have this, my sensor. I'm going to make this a little bigger because we're going to make a couple of copies. And the number of keys required is set to 1 by default, which is generally how we use these. So I'm going to put this on each one and then make a few copies. Move this out of the way. So I'm going to make a few copies of this to show some of the things that we can do with this. So I'm going to make 5 copies to match up with my 5 stripes that I'm going to end up using. And then I'm going to go into my sensors here, my tag sensors, and change the number of keys required to 2, 3, 4, and 5 respectively. So it's going to look for that number of tags before it turns on. So now the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, and fifth one. Because by the end there are 5 tags lit up, so the one looking for 5 tags will be able to turn on. And then I can change this sequence by increasing my timer, and we get a nice little effect there. So this is mighty handy. I know I've used this several times, not necessarily for this, but I've definitely done something similar. Okay. Last thing we'll talk about is, and I gotta just clean up here. So I'm going to use the same sequencer. I'm just going to delete my logic that I have here. And set this timer back up to 4 seconds. Wire it to my sequencer. And change this. And get rid of our keys. And change this back to start playing forward. Because we want it to start playing forward when the timer gets to the end. And then we're going to show you some of the things that we can do with Magic Mouse. So I like to stretch my Magic Mouse to be 1 stripe, and then shrink my sequencer down so that it's one little tick longer than 1 stripe. And you'll see why I'm doing that in a second. Notice that every time, I have it set to repeat here. Let's see if I can, no, that's just going to make the delay longer. I need to set this to stop repeating. Or looping. So now it will play once every time the timer gets to the end. And notice that I don't have any text going, so let's add some text here. Sample text. And then let's also set it to subtitles. Subtitles are pretty popular because it just displays text at the bottom of the screen, which has a lot of nice uses. So notice that I have my timer set up so I can control how often it plays, or you can have whatever input you would like. And then because I've made my Magic Mouth exactly 1 stripe long, to change the length that it plays for, all I need to do is change this time here. Okay? So that's the basics of sequencers. I hope to hit these more later as we do some more complicated things. But that's it for now. Thanks for stopping by.